Hello and welcome to Oblock's Rimworld Guide to the Midgame. In the previous video, I demonstrated a way to get a functional starter base up and running quickly. Now that we have a secure little spot to work inside, we can pursue more involved projects. This stretch of the game will take substantially more time than our initial base work, so be prepared for a longer haul. Several factors will affect how long this takes, such as the number of colonists you have at your disposal, travel time efficiency for producing materials and building, and the possibility of setbacks due to random events. On a low difficulty setting, this phase will be relatively painless, but higher difficulty of course brings more challenges. The example base here has problems in all of these areas. Neither available valley is large enough to accommodate the building sizes I prefer, but the western area holds the most potential. Because I started in the eastern valley, I dug a little tunnel to connect the two. Even so, my work sites and my currently occupied base are far apart, meaning a lot of time is wasted on travel. This can be avoided by picking a better map with one big valley or building out in the wide open spaces. My workforce was smaller than you would typically have when doing a normal tribal start with 5 people. Since I started the game with just 2 colonists, everything has taken a little longer. I also had only one good builder for some time, eventually deciding to make my night owl recruit into a secondary constructor to help. A third issue hampering colony development came in the form of a 4-man raid, wherein a single Chaos Mage Raider was able to beat the living daylights out of most of my team thanks to his spell Shield. I made the mistake of coming out to attempt to kite him and his buddy, and while his friend went down easily enough, he did not, and engaged one of my slower pawns in melee. I had also missed the fact that a pair of other raiders had broken into the far side of my base and set fire to my kitchen and warehouse. Once I managed to down the mage and bandage everyone, I took out one more raider and the last guy fled. During the raid, one colonist had a mental break and had wandered into the last 2 raiders who were attempting to eviscerate him. The colonist who patched him up then went berserk and had to be neutralized and healed as well. Everyone was beaten up to some degree, their clothing in tatters, all the food was destroyed, and my stock of skins and cotton cloth went up in flames. This could have been avoided had I been paying better attention and played it safe behind my palisade walls. During this phase, we'll be working on 3 main projects: research, permanent stone buildings, and moving our supplies and operations to the new constructions. This would include moving materials to new storage facilities, as well as planting our fields nearby our new kitchen. If your new facilities are very close to or even on top of the old ones, this will be much easier. We'll want at least one pawn dedicated to research if we can afford it. Food, warm clothing, and base repairs will take precedence if needed. Assuming you've already completed the basic workbenches topic, you'll want to prioritize projects based on your own needs or preferences. Medieval technology and the medieval tech crafting will allow us to build a smokehouse for fast, bulk meat processing. Basic and complex furniture unlocks double beds and most storage objects. The bird post will allow you to build the medieval equivalent to a trade beacon and comms console for more trading opportunities. Medieval tailoring and smithing opens up a variety of clothing and armors, while medieval defenses and advanced defenses allow building stone embrasures to fire through. The advanced smithing offers stronger armors, and regular old smithing provides the vanilla armors as well as unlocking vents. SD bridges and the drawbridge are helpful for defense, or just for looks, while the separate tab for terraforming has pretty much all of the terrain options available for research. You'll have to unlock these through dev mode if you're playing with Maynard Medieval as the storyteller, or some other limit on research level. Alternatively, you may want to learn how to make traps earlier if you're not using palisades to hide behind, or would rather have a kill box and trap corridor for defense. If you're playing a particularly hot map, you might want to unlock Devil Strand much earlier so you can plant it ASAP and start making improved heat-resistant clothing. I generally don't unlock it until I've got terraforming capability for rich soil, since it takes so long to grow. If your plants never reach maturity during a shorter growing season, all you've done is waste time and effort. As a side note, you can have multiple pawns all working on research at once, increasing the speed at which things get done. You'll need one bench or research spot per pawn though. Somewhere along the way, you hopefully should have enough random animal skins laying around to produce some bedrolls for your colonists to sleep in comfort. It doesn't really matter what you make them from, since they'll be temporary anyway. They'll come in handy later in the game when you want to send out a caravan. You'll also want to make sure you've got winter cloaks for everyone, unless you're in the tropics. Tribal wear is actually pretty good for temperature regulation, surprisingly, and has a lower material cost than tailoring a shirt and pants separately. Plus, it might be the only option at this point in the game. If you have the resources, it's not a bad idea to replace tattered or poor quality gear as you go. If you don't have the resources, you soon will. Since wooden buildings have the major weakness of incredible flammability, they should be replaced or upgraded with stone walls ASAP. You'll want to place a stone chipping spot or bench somewhere near the intended work sites for your new buildings. Set up a dumping stockpile for stone chunks right next to these, and haul a bunch of whichever stone you want to use for your buildings. Set the bill to process stone forever and drop it on the floor. This way your stone chipper can work efficiently. Just make sure to suspend the job if your supply is depleted and your stone chipper is running out on their own to retrieve chunks, or if you need them to produce some emergency gear. There's not much point in hauling stone blocks to a separate storage area somewhere else unless you have a lot of colonists with nothing better to do at this time, so dropping them on the ground is just fine. This is a good time to start laying out building blueprints using the More Planning tool. You can set up plans in various colors, then copy them and move them around easily with paste to find the best spot and orientation. If you put a copy of the planned building somewhere out of the way, you can easily return to copy it again for later use. I usually start with the kitchen, butcher, and food storage area as one big 13 by 13 building, with a second layer of walls around it for a total size of 15 by 15. Double walls offer more security from raiders, and I believe they provide better insulation than single thickness as well. We'll build a few food storage baskets for raw foods, a meal rack or two for finished meals, a butcher table, stone oven, and smokehouse for bulk meats. Bedrooms can be laid out separately, in a line, or as part of a larger set of dorms. I tend to favor a dorm setup with space for a heat source, cooling, and tables. You'll want to place vents into each bedroom so that heating and cooling can be done most efficiently from a central location. Lights inside bedrooms aren't necessary, but if you have the steel to spare and you like the look, they don't take much time to build. You'll want to finish out your kitchen and dorms first. Next up will be the new workshop and storage warehouse. I recommend 13 by 13 buildings with the extra wall layer on the outside for each. Place them close to each other so your crafters don't have to run cross-country to get to their supplies. To make the best use of space, construct pallets for holding textiles, skids for metals, jars for silver, and tall shelves for miscellaneous stuff that won't go into your other storage units. A fueled trade beacon in the center of the warehouse covers the whole area and doubles as a light source. You can't use it without the message bench and the birdcage though, so make sure to build these as well when you're ready to do some trading. Your workshop should be large enough to house all of the medieval workbenches you'll need, and you can place a clothing rack and weapons cabinet for easy access as well. After furnishing these, a hospital and prison facility would be the next most useful set of buildings. If you want to be able to house many prisoners at once, make sure you have more than a handful of prison cells in the building. These don't have to be as big as your bedrooms, and you don't need a large main room for amenities. but you'll want an area for heating and cooling and vents for each cell. The hospital is easier since you can just use one big room for everybody. Just make sure there's adequate space for your heating and cooling, as well as medicine stores. Once you've researched advanced medieval defensive systems, you can work on replacing your wooden palisade walls with stone walls and embrasures. You'll want to alternate embrasures with regular wall pieces so your pawns have a spot to hide behind and an adjacent spot to shoot through. These walls can be augmented further by building barricades, movement-slowing terrain, or even a deep water moat along the outside. You can completely enclose your base with a deep water moat, using drawbridges to get across, if you choose. This takes a substantial amount of time and effort, however, so it's probably not worth neglecting the more useful, smaller projects early on. Eventually, once you have the more vital buildings in place, you can construct a dedicated room for recreation. Once again, a large building is a good idea, since some of the rec items are fairly large. You'll also probably want to add art pieces and comfy chairs for relaxation purposes. This phase of the game generally takes quite a bit of time, as you'll need to gather and process stone chunks into usable blocks, clear land and excavate mountains, and balance all of the challenges of keeping your colony intact and running. You'll probably need to rearrange your work and research priorities a few times due to lack of resources, temporary reductions in manpower, or to accommodate a schedule such as the planting season. Eventually, you should have a nice new set of permanent, fireproof buildings to house your colonists and industry. Depending on the available tech levels, you may be close to having a completed base, or still have all of the industrial and advanced research topics to pursue. At any rate, you'll have a strong stone colony from which to plot your future escape or dominance if you choose to stay and rule the planet. Thanks for dropping by Oblock's Guide to the Rimworld Midgame. See you next time.